Well, it's good to be back with you for another opportunity for us to join in Bible study today as we are walking through the BU study, looking into 36 different Bible characters as well as what their personality type is. We're working through the Enneagram and just using it as an opportunity to understand ourselves and people in the Bible better. And all of this is brought to you courtesy of Christ's Table, an incredible ministry. Would love to have you learn more about it, maybe even join us in participation. You can find out everything about Christ's Table by that URL right there, www.christtable.today. Also, check us out on Facebook and sign up for our email list there while you are on the website. It will give you all of the information that's going on. There are a lot of things going on over the next few days. One of them is this Bible study. If you'd like to participate in this Bible study along with us more regularly, then you can go to that URL, go.christtable.today/BU. You're going to be able to download the entire schedule for the Bible study there. You can also get the book that we're working through, and you can take the Enneagram personality test for free, or there's one there as well that costs just a little bit of money, but will give you a little bit more insight to find out exactly which biblical characters you match up with best. And if you don't know your Enneagram number, I tell you, it will be quite fascinating, and would love to hear as we go along which ones that you align with and what your numbers are. And so this is just a great study. And I mentioned that book. This is a great book when we're talking about personalities and the Enneagram. Now this isn't the Bible. It's not thus saith the Lord. It's just an opportunity to do self-reflection. But this book, The Road Back to You by Ian Crone, is an incredible book, and we're walking through it as a part of a book discussion group every week. In fact, Wednesday nights we're doing that, and we're starting tonight. So you can jump in on this with us by going to go.christtable.today/discuss at 8 p.m. Eastern tonight and join in on discussion of chapters 1 and 2. And if you've not gotten the book or haven't been able to do the readings yet, that's okay. Go ahead and jump in and just sit and listen and participate. It'll be fine. And you can download this book if you don't already have it. And a link on that webpage, go.christtable.today.bu, where the Enneagram test and the Bible study and all those resources are. There's a link to the book there. Or let me know, and I've got a box that has that and a whole bunch of other spiritual formation resources, and I can send you a physical copy of this book. I think I have 2 or 3 more now of those boxes. They're almost all gone, but I'd love to put one in your hands. This weekend, we're going to be meeting in person if you're in the northeastern Ohio area up in Cleveland, and so would love to have you be a part of that at 11 a.m. at Manry Park in Willowick. On our email list, I'll be sending out another email about that to give all of the details, but that's what you need to know. Manry Park in Willowick on Sunday at 11 a.m. And then a week from this coming Sunday down here in South Florida in Jupiter at this place that we call home, the Young Cabin. All the address and information will be in the email. So if you're down here, just want to pay a visit to South Florida during the beautiful time of year that it is. Beautiful every time of year down here in South Florida. Come pay us a visit. We'd love to have you show up in person to our gathering. But why don't we dig in? This morning we are in Judges chapter 15, verses 1 through 17 for the story of Samson. Now, I have to admit that whenever we look at the story of Samson, this is not a Sunday school story. And if you have never read the story of Samson other than what you have heard from Sunday school teachers or maybe watching movies or in culture, I'd encourage you to read the story of Samson. Judges chapters 13 through 16 at some point. It is crazy. It is chaos. And oftentimes Samson is made out to be a hero in the stories that we tell in Sunday school. But Samson really is a zero. Samson is a really he's kind of an anti-hero. He's a very, very difficult figure. And part of the reason why Samson is a very difficult figure is because Samson is an unhealthy 8. 8s, the personality type, are commonly known as challengers, which should make sense, right? They have a deep-seated need to be against things, which isn't always bad. Being against something isn't bad, especially if that thing is an injustice, if it isn't right. It is good that we have people who are strongly outspoken and willing to get involved whenever they see things that are not right. Eights tend to be very aggressive, very bold, though, in their outspokenness and in their confrontation. And sometimes the anger and hostility that comes along with that response to injustice is directed towards those whom they perceive to be oppressors or bullies or rule breakers. Eights are there to protect the underdogs who are people, and the underdog ideas. When that's channeled and directed in a healthy way towards things that are true injustices, eights are God's gift to society. When eights are unhealthy and it's channeled in unhealthy ways through unhealthy responses, or maybe towards things that aren't truly injustices, eights can be a bull in a china shop. They can be very problematic, and every personality type is going to have both its healthy use and its healthy side, and it's going to have its shadow side, its unhealthy side. And so today we're going to look a little bit at Samson, who is an unhealthy eight, and it is quite a story. There is no soap opera on daytime television that is as crazy. There is no show on HBO that is as crazy as Samson's story. At their best, eights are dynamic, confident leaders. They're unafraid to challenge authority and act as champions for the underdog. And we see windows of that in Samson. But at their worst, and we see more than a window, we see, huge doors and panoramas of an eight at its worst. They struggle to understand that vulnerability is not a weakness. And Samson is deathly afraid of being seen as being invulnerable or as being betrayed. And so most eights oftentimes are unaware of the domineering way that other people experience them in relationships. Samson is so unhealthy. I don't know that Samson is unaware of the domineering way that people see him. Basic desire in an eight is to fight injustice, to lead others to do their best. Biggest fear, being controlled or being betrayed. Deadly sin, the thing that is the vice usually, is lust, and that truly is the situation in Samson's story today and really throughout the story. Women are kryptonite to Samson, and it causes him a great deal of problems that he is unable to control his lust. Now lust in an eight can be problematic in a sexual way for an eight personality type, but really lust of any sort. People lust for many things other than sex. People lust for power. People lust for control. People lust for influence. People lust to be loved or to be important. And so there are many things that can be lusted for, and for eights tends to be the vice. You might be an eight if you're direct, strong-willed, assertive, skeptical, confident, confrontational, brutally honest, charismatic, passionate, protective, or you might be an eight if other people say regularly that you are those things. So let's jump into a portion of our text today in Numbers chapter 15, verses 1 through 17. Now, I'm not going to go through all of 1 through 17 today. I want to encourage you to keep reading, and I'd encourage you, like I said, to just kind of leaf through the story of Samson from the beginning of chapter 13 all the way through chapter 17. Samson was a special child. He was born to parents who could not get pregnant. His birth was announced by an angel. So this was a very special kid, very rare. He took a vow, a Nazirite vow, which usually adults would take for a period of time, a few weeks, a month or two, which meant that they would avoid certain things, wouldn't cut the hair, wouldn't drink alcohol. Samson has a lifetime Nazirite vow. And so this is a very special individual who's complex. So later on, Samson's an adult here. During the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat as a present to his wife. He said, "I'm going into my wife's room to sleep with her," but her father wouldn't let him. It's a whole story there. We don't have time to get into that because that's not the part of the story that we're interested in telling today. I truly thought you must hate her, her father explained, so I gave her in marriage to your best man. But look, her younger sister is even more beautiful than she is. Marry her instead. Now, there are some personality types. Maybe some of you are watching right here. Maybe the 9, peacemaker, or maybe 2, the helper. There are some personality types who would submit. If the father was a very bold and forceful and 8 type personality, and maybe the father-in-law here is an 8, just like Samson is, there are some personality types who would be like, okay, I can't do anything about this situation. I guess my wife is gone. I can be angry, but there's nothing I can do about this situation. So I'll just take the more beautiful sister for 200, Alex, and marry her instead. But not an 8, and certainly not Samson. As you read this, you can almost begin to feel Samson's blood boil within. You can hear that heartbeat quickening in his chest as that blood pressure begins to rise. You can begin to see the flush in Samson's face, and the veins begin to stand out along the temples as it begins to rise up within him, a bit like the Incredible Hulk, where you know that moment where Bruce Banner is about to absolutely go insane. Maybe you felt that. Maybe that is your difficulty, maybe as an 8 or as any personality type, where you can feel that rising within you, and you have that moment, that fleeting moment where you can either control your reaction and you can control yourself, or you're going to lose yourself and say something that you're going to regret, or do something that you're going to regret. Many personality types have a much easier time dealing with that moment and the moments after that moment than an 8. For an 8, this is a key moment. Not that you have to back down or retreat, though sometimes that is the right thing to do, but it's how you control that desire and that thing that's welling up within you, or how you have no control over it, that really in the end defines whether you are healthy or unhealthy. So let's see what Samson does in this moment. Because if he acts in an unhealthy way, he's going to revert to self-preservation, survival mode, looking out only for his needs and for his protection. And this oftentimes is something that we should really keep in mind, is if we are 8 or otherwise acting out of preserving ourselves or acting out of survival mode in a situation that is not going to take our life, that's overreacting, right? Especially if it drives us to looking out for our own needs and protecting ourselves. Why is this wrong, to look out for our own needs and to protect ourselves? Well, it's not, but also the Bible has encouraged us over and again to care for our neighbor. And so Jesus is continually reminding us that the needs of others are at least as important, if not in many instances more important than our own needs and our own protection. You know, Jesus says, a brother lay down his life for his friends. Jesus laid down his life for other people. And so it's in these moments where we understand the difference between healthy and unhealthy and how we react. Do we jump to self-preservation and survival mode? Do we look out for our own needs and protection of ourselves? Or do we keep in mind how our actions and reactions are going to impact other people? So how does Samson react in this moment? Samson says, This time I cannot be blamed for everything I'm going to do to you, Philistines. And is there any line that is more characteristic of an 8 than this line? I cannot be held responsible for what I am about to do. And is there any line that is more wrong than that line? Yes, you can be held responsible for what you do and say. Yes, you will be held responsible for what you do and say. If not in this life, the Bible seems to indicate that in the next life you will be held responsible. But I have to admit, whenever I've seen people who act in ways as though they can't be blamed for what they are about to do, and then they do it thinking that there will be no retribution, or they'll just receive it in the next life and God will forgive. Most of the time, I see those people suffer in this life in one way or another. You will be held responsible for your own actions. You are responsible for your own actions, thoughts, and behavior, whatever they may be. And no matter how justified you may be, you ultimately are the only person who's going to be held responsible for your actions, and you will be held responsible. Samson says, I can't be blamed for everything I'm going to do to you, Philistines. But Samson receives a great deal of pain in his life for living by that code. Then he goes out, he catches 300 foxes, he ties their tails together in pairs, and he fastens a torch to each pair of tails. Then he lit the torches and let the foxes run through the grain fields of the Philistines and burned all of their grain to the ground, including the sheaves and the uncut grain, and he also destroyed their vineyards and olive groves. Immediate famine in the land in those days. Likely not storing it up for multiple years. No other place to turn for food. This, for many, will be a death sentence. Many people will die because of lack of food. That's going to make a city and a people mad, right? Who did this? The Philistines demanded. Samson was the reply, because his father-in-law from Timnah gave Samson's wife to be married to his best man. Oftentimes, 8s will overreact. So the Philistines went and got the woman and her father and burned them to death. Because you did this, Samson vowed, I won't rest until I take my revenge on you. This is an unhealthy 8 who has moved from self-preservation and avoidance of vulnerability to retribution, and now is at the stage of revenge no matter what. It's not just Samson who lives like this, though. We do too. We may not be tying torches to fox tails, burning grain fields to the ground, bringing famine upon an entire people group. But oftentimes our revenge for perceived or real injustice is equally sinful, wrong, hate-filled, and demonic. Samson was too strong for his own good. And this is a chink in the armor of 8s. They are strong individuals, and thankfully so. The world needs challengers. The world needs 8s. The world needs people who will, when a country like Russia invades a country like Ukraine, the world needs 8s who will stand up and challenge injustice. 8s are God's gift to the world. 8s are God's gift to organizations. 8s are God's gift to his family. That there are people who will stand up, draw a line in the sand, and say, no. But the danger of that is that we will be, as 8s, too strong for our own good. That we won't have that power harnessed and under control. Samson threw his weight around, and if you read the entire story through chapters 13 through 16, Samson strong-armed his way through relationships, through romantic relationships, through religious relationships, through enemy relationships. He strong-armed his way through relationships and his public life. He relied on his strength, and it was his downfall, literally and metaphorically, for you and I as well. He left his trail of destruction in his wake, if you read the stories, and there was a ton of collateral damage from his unhealthy anger and aggression. And as an 8, when you are too strong for your own good, oftentimes you don't see it or won't see it, but there is a ton of collateral damage, which oftentimes you don't even know is there from your unhealthy anger and aggression, which is why you have to control it, because you will not see its effects. But what I love about this story, and I'm going to jump to a verse actually that's just outside of our reading for today, the end of the chapter. Samson judged Israel for 20 years during the period when the Philistines dominated the land. It's fascinating to me, and with this we'll close. I have a real hard time reconciling this, that Samson was such a woefully terrible individual. One of the worst individuals in the Old Testament text, and certainly one of the worst individuals in the Old Testament text who is a part of God's people. It's hard for me to reconcile, though, that Samson was a judge, which essentially means that he was numbered among the important people in the Old Testament, like Deborah, like Gideon, as other judges, but also would have risen to the level of leadership, not unlike a prophet, such as Moses, or a king, such as David or Solomon. Now, each of those roles were different, but it means that Samson was a fabric of the God-ordained leadership structure in the Old Testament. Now, we hear judge, and there's a part to that which means judge, similarly to we mean today, but it was more than just making decisions. There was a leadership component to this. Having taken the Nazirite vow as well, Samson was a religious leader and example to other people. It's fascinating to me that God allows Samson to remain in the position of judge for 20 years during the period when the Philistines dominated the land. It kind of frustrates me a little bit about God, frankly, that this incredibly terrible example of an individual who seemingly only in a Hail Mary pass at the very end of life does the right thing, but mostly for selfish reasons, also seems to be a part of God's leadership structure. And all that I can make of that is this: you're going to mess up, but God is still going to use you. I don't know what you've done. You've not done something worse than Samson. And God still used Samson. Now, it would be easy maybe for us to just simply justify ourselves and what we've done and say, God's going to use me no matter what. But when you look at the road that Samson traveled, I often wonder what Samson's life could have been like and what the nation's life would have been like had Samson had been a healthy 8, if he had been healthy in his personality, which would have spilled over to his relationships and to his spirituality and to the way he conducted himself. God used him. Oftentimes God used him, though, as a cautionary tale. God used him as an example of how not to live. And I'd encourage the same for you. God is still going to use you, but you have the choice as to whether or not God uses you as an example of greatness, or whether God uses you as a cautionary tale of a life essentially wasted when so much was so much was possible. But either way, even if you've been Samson, even if you have been an unhealthy person, God has still used you. And if you're still sucking air, God will still use you. As with Samson, for 20 years, there was always time. Samson spent most of that time wasting the opportunity that he had to turn it around. We don't have to live the same errors or make the same mistakes. Well, until tomorrow, happy reading.